right, we'll open up the meeting of September 11th of the Select Board. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to also suggest that we acknowledge that, today is September 11th, acknowledge all of the first responders and individuals who lost their lives on that day with a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. All right, manifests. What have you got, Chris?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the accounts payable manifest of September 11th, 2017, and the payroll manifest for September 12th, 2017.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. There you go. The only appointment we have coming in tonight is the tax collector.
You have a 7 o'clock public hearing,
Yep.
and then after that, an appointment with the tax collector.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, minutes. I want to make a motion. Can we do all three at the same time, or is there any individual ones that anyone wants to discuss?
Are there any amendments to the August 28th minutes?
All right, let's have a motion, please.
For all three?
Yeah, let's start with all three.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the Select Board meeting on August 28th, 2017, July 31st, 2017, and the non-public minutes from August 28th, 2017.
Second.
Okay,
Is that right? 31st?
discussion? Any discussion to the, about the amendments that were made, or the changes that were made? Charlie, you're all set?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Right.
Alrighty then. Reports from assigned boards and committees. Anyone?
Budget Committee meets Thursday, I hope.
All right. No, nothing from the planning board.
Planning board didn't meet
Okay.
at its most recent regular scheduled date. They
Okay.
meet the 27th, and we'll hold a public hearing on the revocation of the site plan approval for the former USA Springs.
That's on the 27th. Okay. All right, let's go into town administrator's report.
Just a couple things for I buried you in an email at the end of last week, so you're up to date through most things. I got one thing to ask you to sign. It's a appointment of a health inspector. One of the guys that's been plugging in for us as building inspector also is qualified to be a health inspector. this will hold us over until we get some permanent arrangement.
Yeah.
We can limp along without one, but it involves a lot more work by the board, so if we can appoint him, then we can hand that work off on a per diem basis and
Okay.
not trouble you with it. Dennis Pelletier. I think, look at the signature boxes here, I think it's for all of you. Yep, bottom left,
So is that, Chris, we pay him as we
as
need
we
him?
use them, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And I would imagine that that's pretty low volume.
Yeah, it's just occasional stuff. It's very, I wouldn't say rare, but it's very light duty. Second thing is a nice note from John Fernald saying thank you for the party and the bridge and whatnot. I don't know if you got that electronically or not, but that's in there. What else?
Does anybody want to
Not
have
if
any
you want.
conversations about appointing Dennis
Pelletier.
Pelletier as the health officer on a temporary basis?
No, I have no problem with that.
You don't need a motion, correct?
No.
I think it's great that he's able to do both for us.
Yeah. What else? I got the results of the annual fuel bids in. It's a bad time to be doing it with all the weather spiking prices. The heating oil came in almost exactly at last year's price. Diesel floats with the market. We don't lock in long-term there, but propane looks to be jumping. It started jumping about 10 days ago, I think, to about 30% more than we're paying right now. Propane, the biggest use of propane for us is the fire station, the new fire station. So I'm gonna drag my feet, I think, on locking in for another couple of weeks. We have until the end of the month, till our current contract expires.
Yeah.
I think unless you have a concern, I'm gonna wait a week or two and see if things might settle down on the propane market. That's the hub for that is somewhere in Texas.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm no energy expert. It's a little bit of a gamble, but you know, and this is not a what's the word? Fungible. It's not like you can track propane off what you've seen at the pump.
Right.
But some of the factors that increase what's going on at the pump, if you've bought gas lately, you've seen it jump dramatically. I think some of those things may be related. They may not be, but
Yeah.
I'm just gonna hold off on committing to that price for another 10 days or so. Today's the 11th. But the heating oil stuff is, that's actually, looking at what's been going on, it's a little more stable than propane, so. Anyway, this is not a budget buster, it's just something that I'm keeping an eye on,
Yeah.
and we'll
That's good.
jump on that in about 10 days, I think. And I also got the results just late this afternoon of the supplemental traffic counts that we had talked about some time ago.
Said the what?
Traffic counts.
Traffic count, yeah.
Primarily on our gravel roads. I will send you those. I need to get a couple technical questions answered, and I'll send you the results once I get those questions, because I know you're going to ask the same questions. But just a real quick first glimpse. We'll be talking about highway things later tonight. So we were looking at the Ledge Farm, Poor Farm area,
Yep.
Stevens Hill, Cooper
Yep.
Hill. Trying to get use this as an indicator for our priority setting.
Yep.
As we look forward. Just rough order of magnitude. Traffic counts both directions. Ledge Farm on a weekday. These were done in August on weekdays. Ledge Farm south of Poor Farm. So Ledge Farm on the way to Epping.
Yep.
500 trips both directions for the day.
So it could be a round trip.
So it could be, yes, but it's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
500 passes of northbound, one way or the other. Stevens Hill, 260. So there's a scale for you. Cooper Hill, 350. And I'll give you all the details on this, but and Case Road, which is one of those quiet dirt roads with
Yes,
development brewing, 110.
okay.
So what we were looking for was kind of the rough order of magnitude of
Yeah.
traffic that we're seeing, and sure enough, Ledge Farm and Cooper Hill, considerably busier than the other dirt things we were looking
I'm really surprised at that number on Ledge.
at. I am not.
Back
Not?
No.
Okay,
But, when you look at it on a map and stuff, and I'll give you some more details on it, but just when you get it, that's where it's coming from. And there's some technical things that I gotta
Okay.
be able to answer, but
okay.
that's coming. And I think that's all I have right now.
Okay, any questions for Chris?
Will those figures have the previous values from the last time?
These are not things that we don't do them routinely. This was a one-off that we did. It just so happens that the New Hampshire state counts, the DOT counts that are done every 3 years, on some town roads, those are being done this year as well, so, it'll actually help to have kind of same year numbers. But the routine state ones they're really looking at bridges and roads feeding the main state highways. And there's probably 7 or 8 or 10 locations that get counted every 3 years in town. Even on town roads, not just state highways,
Really?
but town roads.
Okay,
But we paid for these counts to get a sense of, we'd had a lot of discussion about paving gravel, and if to do that, where.
right.
So these are mostly gravel road counts, that we just got a one-off, quick and easy and cheaper than a big multi-year study, but, and it's nothing jumped out at me as all that surprising.
But, 500, the count of 500 on Ledge Farm, I mean, that's almost a constant, steady stream of traffic on that
Yeah,
road.
it's very, we only had, it was like a 3 or 4 day window.
Yeah,
There's no overnight traffic, which wouldn't surprise you.
so wait,
It's
is
all-
that per day or in that total period?
That is,
I travel that road almost every day.
Do you?
yeah.
Is that over the period or?
No.
It's per day?
Yeah,
3 miles short of that, I think.
So you go up and down that road 10 or 12 times a day?
oh, I'm
Charlie?
sorry, no,
Not a
no,
day.
that's,
Once or
that's
twice
a
day.
total, let me get let me call up the details on it, this will give me a minute, the detail, I knew I was jumping the gun by bringing these
Yeah.
up, but, I was just so tickled to have them earlier than expected that, yeah, so there's some seasonal adjustments and things going on there, but, call it 400 in a 24-hour period. And I'll explain the seasonality and all that stuff, but,
Okay,
yeah, if a typical hour in the middle of the day is 31, 28, 25, so 1 every 2 minutes,
no,
right? That's during business hours.
Yeah.
yeah,
And that probably jives with what you see when you're driving it every day.
Yeah, it depends. Now, during the day, it's not bad, midday, like in the morning or in the afternoon coming back.
Yeah,
There's always, I don't actually putt along. I'll do 5 or 10 over the speed limit, and there's always somebody right up my ass.
yeah. Okay,
Anyway.
good, that's good to
It's
have
a
that.
cut through. It's 3 miles shorter to Epping, or down to 125, if you're coming from Stevens Hill Road and that way, that side of town.
yeah.
So that's why it gets a lot of traffic. Smoke Street's like, Smoke Street gets a lot of traffic between 125 and Route 4.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's good to have that done already, Chris. And we can factor that into planning.
Yeah, and as we come into, I mean, we're coming into CIP and budget season, so, we're gonna talk about highway again later tonight, and then we'll be talking again in the fall. So.
Yeah, the thing that I'd be interested in is, so we've got the data inputs.
Right?
How does, while we still have him, what's Johnny's, input for that as well? Does it just go by those numbers, or are there other factors?
Oh, no, there'll be other factors, the prior conditions and
Yeah.
some of our dirt roads are built better than others and
Yeah.
wider than others
Yeah.
and straighter than others.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, anything else, any questions for Chris? No? Okay. So that takes us down to general business, so the invasive species fund request. Okay. So this is something that we get every year. And typically it comes right after, like in June sometime at the beginning of the season, and after the first tax bills have been issued. The way that the program works for Tyler and Tony is that this town started authorizing, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, to contribute $4,000. I think it started at $2,500 or something like that, and went up to $4,000, to help support the Lake Coast program that's run out at Pawtuckaway. They also get grants from New Hampshire Lakes Association, and the organization is supposed to match their grant either in hard dollars or volunteer time. Okay, so last few years, town has contributed money. PLIA has taken some money out of their own fund and, use that to pay the payroll. So they send it to New Hampshire Lakes pays the payroll, okay? And then they have volunteers as well, and they keep track of all the volunteer hours. And they have to match it at, I think, 300%, I think, is what the number is. And the more you match over that 300% drives the potential for additional funding from New Hampshire Lakes in the next season. So that's kind of how the funding of it works. Like I said, we've done this for the past several years. The one question I have this year, Chris, is I'm surprised they've gone this long without requesting the money, because frankly, we always needed it in that June, July time. And New Hampshire Lakes doesn't let you run a deficit. So they had to have paid New Hampshire Lakes nearly all of what they've spent for payroll at this point in time. So, plus, we don't give the money to the PLIA. We give the money to New Hampshire Lakes.
Right.
So, if most of the payroll is paid, why would we give New Hampshire Lakes $4,000 at this point?
I suspect, and I don't know the full answer, couple factors. They're going later in the year this year.
Sure. Well, we've always gone to Columbus Day.
Yeah, she's talking about November.
Yeah, but that's gonna be a handful of days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it possible that there was matching funds left over from the prior year at New Hampshire Lakes?
I don't know that, that's a good
That-
question.
That, would perpetually roll over if it's,
Correct.
if the timing of our last grant was such, the check didn't arrive until August or whatever, perhaps that caused it, I don't know. And as I read Dee's request, it looks like PLIA is fronting some more than they had anticipated because of the timing of the, they had asked for this They asked us for this a week or 10 days ago or something.
Yeah, but
And ended up floating some more than that, so
Yeah.
that's the best I can do. I don't know any better than that.
So I don't know how everybody,
They did submit a request while Chris was on vacation, so the original request kind of came in beforehand, and then it kind of was resubmitted when you came.
Oh, okay.
okay. Okay, so here's my concern. We don't give the money to PLIA. We give the money to New Hampshire Lakes. I don't believe New Hampshire Lakes is going to be letting them run that big of a deficit. So, and in my mind, there's no way that the PLIA would be getting a refund from New Hampshire Lakes, right? New Hampshire Lakes may have money sit in that account, right? But what I don't want is, and this isn't any way an expression of lack of support, because I'm the one that started this, but I don't see any reason for $4,000 to sit in somebody's account until next year, rather than in our own fund.
I don't recall us starting a special revenue fund for this.
Last year,
Was it
2016.
last year?
2016.
And there's $10,000 in there now?
Yeah, it's an ETF, not a special revenue fund, so.
Okay, I just didn't recall it.
Yeah,
And the thinking behind that was, we need to build up a little reserve if we need to respond to
milfoil.
a milfoil or whatever. You can't wait until town meeting
Right.
to throw money at that kind of problem, so that was the purpose of the,
And the 10,000 that got raised goes into that fund, and it didn't specify that any amount of that would be going to anybody.
correct.
Right.
You as the board are the agents of the fund, you decide what it's spent on. And last year you decided that 4,000 was spent on the monitoring and prevention.
Correct.
And the remaining 6 sits in
Correct.
the fund.
Yep. Yep.
We're gonna make a motion just to hold off until we get answers to this, or?
Yeah, I don't think you need a motion to do that, right? Or do you need a motion for that?
No, I think, no, we can put it off. I think, they may be in need of something to finish the year. So I wonder if you might approve part of it, and I don't wanna leave them hanging if we,
She's saying, though, how much do they really need?
I understand that, and
Exactly.
That's what I'm wondering. What do they need to be square for this year?
the, there was one thing way down the bottom that was in the red. So they're in deficit by 285.
Yeah, so if you look at this, look at the other side of this, it basically says there was 2,615 carried over from last year. Carry over locally contributed funds from 2016. $2,615. If I'm reading that correctly.
That's how I would interpret that, yeah.
Yeah. There's no date on this treasurer's report either.
It says as of August 2nd.
Oh, I see, okay.
And then, yeah, I've got an email with a later, where did this? Where did this even come from? Is this what they submitted when I was gone?
I thought it was the attachment.
No, this is older than what I have.
What you had, is that what came from
Is-
Don or from you?
Is August 27th.
Are you sure that's not the letter she sent?
comparing the numbers.
Yeah, the summary you forwarded to us today in email was as of 8/27,
Yeah.
so that was newer.
You sent that,
Chose the old letter, I apologize.
No, you may not have had anything newer, that's not. You just got what I got today. Well, the part in red that looks pretty clear to me is that they are $285 in the red for payroll that has already been paid.
okay.
And then whatever they have going forward, I do not know what they would spend for the remainder of the year.
It's not gonna be $4,000.
That could very well be, it makes sense, but, do you wanna take a stab at something that you'd be okay with approving now with the caveat that we go back and look at the rest of it before? I don't know how strict the float rules are with, New Hampshire Lakes. I don't know how far they'll,
They bug you for it. They bug you for it, and,
you
you know,
know it all better than I do.
when I was doing it, I think I, could get a week or two out of them. But that, may have, part of it may have been because we had such a great relationship with them,
Yeah.
I don't know, how do you guys feel about that? Authorizing a small, or a portion of the money?
But I mean, are we eventually gonna give them the 4,000, or? I mean, that's what we've done,
I'm not,
but-
They don't need it this year, why give it to them?
No, that's what I wanna know. yeah.
That's kinda how I feel too. Cause if, if 2,000 sat with New Hampshire Lakes last year, I'd rather have, 2,000, sitting with us and not them.
I'm just double checking some of the math here. So yeah, it looks like, according to the summary and according to what they, like hourly pay remaining, it looks like they're roughly $248 in the red.
Yeah.
So, yeah, why do we need $4,000 to square that off?
Well, they also need to cover their September, October, November.
Oh, they have,
Activity, that's
right,
the-
right. It's
I don't
not
know how much
over,
that is.
it's not over with at this
Yeah,
point.
but they're not gonna,
It'd be
I don't know.
562,
in October, November, they,
563 bucks.
it's all gonna be weather dependent, right? And they're gonna lock down most of the program around Columbus Day. And after that, it's gonna be, days that are nice, would be my assumption. Is there any vehicle by which, Chris, you can get this information and then, poll each of the select board members individually, for authorization that maybe we finalize and vote next time we make? Is there any vehicle for which we do it that way?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that makes this out of the ordinary is the fact that it's coming out of an ETF. This isn't operating budget money where you typically give me a lot of latitude to do what
Yeah.
we need to do. So if you're comfortable with that, then, and we get some electronic consensus,
Okay.
on something, then we can make that work.
I'd like to,
Where we are in the.
Make sure they're accountable for exactly what they need.
Yeah, the only, so where are we in the check printing and signing routine and whatnot, but we can figure that out.
yeah, I would, as part of that, I'd like to see what their assumption is and their estimate for what they think their payroll is gonna look like between now and when they plan on ending.
Yeah, that's the missing piece. The rest of that's pretty clear here, but, that's the piece that's missing for.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And again, it's in no way intended as as an indication of lack of support for the program, because, I think we all wholeheartedly 200% support the program. I just don't wanna see money sitting at New Hampshire Lakes.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't want to punish them for, asking for money when I was on vacation. And
No, I
whatnot.
agree, yep. But again, that was still late August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
right.
I will figure that out. And let you know.
Anybody else have any other questions or comments on that? Okay. Alrighty then. Since the tax collector is here and it's 6:59, you wanna jump down from, the emergency lane discussion down to, oh no, we have to do, sorry, apologies, the public hearing is at 7.
I would do the public hearing when you advertise public hearing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so do we have to do roll call vote or vote to
No,
open
you
the
just,
public
you
hearing?
just declare it open, will be sufficient.
Okay. And in this case, this isn't our discussion, this is really for audience discussion, so we'll open the public hearing, have audience input, and then close the public hearing and have our discussion, okay? So I will open the public hearing on the matter of appropriation of unanticipated funds. This has to do with the town being able to accept $128,171 as an additional appropriation of highway block grant funds in accordance with provisions of Senate Bill 38. The funds are additional grants under RSA 235:23 and are to be used for highway construction, reconstruction, or maintenance purposes. I'll now open it to public comment.
Sure, I'm never at a loss for words.
Thank you, Jean.
Eugene Reed, 345 Stage Road, Nottingham. How do we come about this money? I love it.
Want to explain the process, Chris?
The legislature identified a surplus from their prior fiscal year, voted to appropriate these funds based on the same formula they use for other highway block grant funds. Got through the legislature and signed by the governor, and the check arrived in August.
With no action by the town to apply, or?
No, automatic. It has to be used in the same manner that other highway block grant funds are used.
How does that affect our current budget? Is it this fiscal year's budget?
It cannot be used to supplement other sources of funding for projects. It's not intended to be a way to reduce your local tax burden. It is intended to be additional projects. And the intent is that it be spent in the same manner, not stuffed away or...
Based on that, then somebody needs to come up with a plan on how to spend it that wasn't originally intended, is what I think I'm hearing.
It has to be spent on something that was not going to be spent upon this year with local dollars,
Who's going to do that?
but still fits the
General
The
thing of
criteria of the
highway
grant.
contract?
Yep.
So
Correct.
who's going to do that when they got to get it done as we come to, how many months we got left in the year?
I suspect we're gonna do that as soon as you step back from that table.
Okay.
Not that we're trying to rush you, Jean.
This was distributed to all the towns in New Hampshire.
I understand.
Highway block grant.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
It's a very good thing.
Thank you.
All right, barring any other additional public comment, and since there's no one here, I'll assume that there isn't any additional comment, we'll close the public hearing. And now we can have our discussion. So, Chris, do you want to have the discussion? Oh, do you need a motion or anything first?
Yes, you can start with a motion or end with a motion, it doesn't matter to me.
Okay,
Yeah, as long as you end up telling me what to do with the funds, and voting to accept them, then
but are those two separate things, accepting the funds and then having the discussion about what to do with it? Or do we have to make a motion on both?
you do not have to make a motion on both, but you, in order to complete the act of accepting it, you have to, and I suppose you could accept it and just sit on it. That
Oh,
is probably okay.
okay.
So you can do it in two separate motions if you want.
So you do have to have if we say, yes, we want the money, and then we're going to use it on project XYZ.
Yes.
You need a motion on project XYZ as well.
We need that to show how we're using it, and I need it so you don't accuse me of going off and spending the money without your blessing.
So I would recommend that we make it one motion at the end. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. All right, discussion. Is there anybody who is opposed to accepting the funds? Okay. Now, Chris, I think you and Johnny have had some conversations about the best use of this. So what's the recommendation?
Well, as we hinted at or warned of last meeting, we looked at really the two most important projects are either catching up on our overlay, which we're a little bit behind on.
Yep.
I wouldn't say it's dramatic, but that's the kind of, every year we're doing some of it. We'd like to be a little bit more ahead than we are. That's an easily stretchable, shrinkable kind of project where you can kind of buy it by the pound in a way, or by the mile. And secondly, finishing the work on Lakeview that we started this year. We had long laid it for probably since before I got here. The Lakeview project was viewed as 2 years worth of work. It was a $215,000 or $220,000 project this spring to do about 60% of it. That's more than we typically, we typically spend about $200,000 on a major road reconstruction project each year. That's a separate warrant article that identifies, it's typically one project, it's a big one, it's typically a road reconstruction where we're grinding it out and putting down a new base and repaving. Lakeview was so challenging, the road was in such bad condition and had never been done really, and it's long enough that it was going to require 2 years of our annual major project money, or just about 2 years, maybe a little bit less than 2 years worth of money when it was all said and done. Last year we didn't go to town meeting to say we need $400,000 to do this project. We said we're going to break it in half and we'll see you next year for the second half. That's what we told the neighborhood and the residents on the road as well. So if we don't use the found money from the state for Lakeview, we're going to come back to you and recommend that we finish Lakeview next year anyway. It's halfway done or about 60% done. If we do it now, we free up next year to either move every other project in our pipeline up, or if we want to reshuffle, or what, if we want to do extra overlay next year. We're gonna have a new head of the highway department. We're gonna have a discussion. We've already started a discussion about our priorities. We just touched on it with paving gravel roads.
Yep.
So it either accelerates everything by a year or opens up a year to do something that we thought we weren't going to be able to do. So that's the best benefit of doing Lakeview now. The secondary benefits are we get to use the same firm that just did the first half of it. They know exactly what they're getting into. We would not go through a whole competitive bid process on this now. It's too late in the year, and we were very happy with what we got last time around. So having that firm know exactly what's coming, being familiar with the site, it's a tough site, tough road. And if we move on it now, we also get the benefit of having John here when we start.
Rather than having a new person pick it up mid-project.
Yeah, or you have the option to sit on this money. You can not make a decision right now. You can spend it next year if you want on highway-related projects. But with Lakeview, we do it now. We know we're going to get it done outside of the busy lake season, where if we wait till next year and go through another bid process on what looks like a new project, we may struggle to get the price we want at the time we want before Memorial Day over there on the lake. So this is a one-off opportunity that looks like a great way to finally put that project to bed. We put the 2-year project off.
Yeah.
I think a number of times. Things leapfrogged over it because it's such a bear.
And I'm sorry, what's the remaining cost on Lakeview, and how does it relate to the 128?
We're thinking we're in the 95 to 100 to 105,000 range, give or take. You know, one of the things about Lakeview is you don't know what you're gonna get
Right.
when you start digging.
Right.
It's, so the surprises at this point, most of the tough spots in Lakeview, we got through in the spring.
Yeah.
The surprises would be drainage related at this point, catch basins or culverts that we don't expect. So that's the, would be the surprise of it all. So we think we're gonna be in the 95 to 105 range. We have 128 in found money. That's a nice cushion that, if we need it for other highway stuff because of everything else going on the highway this year, we might be able to back into using it. Or if we don't use it, we roll it all over, and whatever we don't use, we roll over into next year for highway purposes. So, you know, it's a
And the firm, I forget the name of the firm that did it. the first
advanced paving.
part. Okay. How quickly would they be prepared to get started?
They will be ready to finish before it's too late to pave. You know, they stop making asphalt at some point, and the weather doesn't let you. We do have a date, the 23rd, is that a week from Saturday?
Yeah.
So if you decide tonight to go ahead, we're gonna meet with the neighborhood on the 23rd with advanced paving to do that walk-around thing that we did
Yep.
for the first half of the
Yep,
project.
yep.
Advanced is ready to go to that. It was really good to have them there this spring for that walkthrough. So they're ready to do that and presumably kick off shortly thereafter. There's 6-8 weeks there, 9 weeks maybe before paving season really comes to an end, which should be enough. They're confident. I think there's probably a lot of towns kind of scrambling for these kind of things right
Sure,
now. So.
sure. Yeah.
If I may, I
Well,
realize, I didn't know the whole. Chris has added something. I'd just like to be sure that you hold a careful use of the money, because I thought it was designated for new projects, and this is an ongoing one. I'm glad to see you take the money, but please make sure that it's in accordance, so we don't end up in a situation where somebody from the state's gonna.
Yeah.
And I assume you have to do an accounting to the state on how it was spent, or is it?
That applies to any highway grant funds. They can come in and ask that question. There's
Yeah.
not a standing report where, you know, we send it back and say, what did we use your money for this year?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of back and forth between the municipal association, DOT, various municipal law firms about what's an appropriate use of this money.
Good, so my question's on point then.
Oh yeah, everybody's asking the same questions, and
Okay, so you're on it.
oh yeah, we're good.
Thank you.
This is clearly not something that you had planned to do this year, and we can show
We've used
that.
the appropriation we had for that now.
Yeah,
This would be in addition to the appropriation that we've already done.
Because it wasn't a project plan for this year.
right.
Correct.
Yeah, and the appropriation that we've already made has been spent,
Right.
so
Okay,
we're clean.
so your recommendation is that we finish Lakeview.
Yes.
I'd like to,
Any discussion, any comments first about it?
I think there's incidental economies to finishing Lakeview now that we won't be able to take advantage of if we wait.
It's gonna be a bit of a surprise to the neighborhood. I know there's some rumors going around out there, but we're gonna surprise some people.
I think it'll be a pleasant surprise.
happy
though.
I hope so, yes.
Charlie?
I don't have a problem with it.
Okay.
make the motion. The select board hereby accepts $128,171.96 pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and 235:23, and directs the town administrator to use the funds for reconstruction, paving, and other related work on Lakeview Drive.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Good job on that, Chris.
Okay, that's Johnny doing all the legwork there.
That is excellent. All right. Tax collector, Mr. Reed, come on down.
Thank you. I'm Gene Reed, and acting as tax collector, giving the board a little update on where we are since we've had a turnover after 20 years to a new person through the election process. First, I owe thank yous to Donna and Chris. You pledged your support when I was elected and under difficult circumstances, and I'm glad that that support has been forthcoming. That support has trickled down to the office staff, which means Don, Sue Serino, Betsy, and Heidi has stayed on as the deputy, which provides me with some support in that department, but especially the office staff, including, which I neglected to put on this, which I'll hand out to you shortly, putting out the 2,500 and something tax bills, which are printed in-house, but folded and stuffed manually. And according to them, this was the quickest that they've been able to, it's been able to be processed. It was an all-hands event, which Chris had, I assume, had approved because it was under his nose.
How long did it take, Gene?
It was 6 hours, Chris. It was not a full working day.
Well, the 2 envelopes that I stuffed didn't take 6 hours, I know that.
Good job, Chris.
It did appear to be the better part of a day, though, for
Yeah, it
a
is.
number of people.
And that's gonna have to occur twice in each year, every year. But
Yeah.
the feedback from the crew is good. And Chris should have promised pizza to everybody, but he didn't.
Hey, Gene, just out of curiosity, is that how every town does it? They print them in-house and then hand stuff them?
I don't know that answer to that. On that note, I've gone to the Rockingham County Tax Collectors meeting just, was that 2 weeks ago, a week ago? 2 weeks ago. And there are lots of topics like that and that haven't been asked. And as the new guy, I'm afraid I asked a lot of questions. And I got good response too, such as, that's a good question. I never thought of that. I have not asked that one,
Okay.
which is a good question because we at 2,500 and something parcels is nowhere near what some of the cities have.
Yeah.
However, the cities have staff.
Right, right.
They have full-time staff, and I don't know. That's a good question. I will, I'm going tomorrow, as a matter of fact, to the Belknap County Tax Collectors meeting. The regions have them, counties usually, which is subdivisions of the New Hampshire Tax Collectors Association. That's a good question for tomorrow up that way to see how they
Just
do
curious.
it. So who stuffs and mails?
Yeah.
I'm also, yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I know that this is one of my non-favorite sayings, but it's always the way it's been done here. But it doesn't mean, I've looked into a folding machine, which there are tons of them out there now, and it wouldn't
Yeah.
only be for my use as tax collector, but the town clerk as well. Because they do a lot of mailings, and they hand stuff, fold and hand stuff their envelopes.
Yeah.
So at some point, I might get together with them on that subject and see if they're interested.
And there's companies that do that, but I would imagine that there's privacy issues with, trying to outsource something like that.
Tax collector information, they make it very clear, it's public information.
Oh, okay, right.
Whereas some of the other stuff with assessing and so forth is not. But everything, I haven't heard any restrictions unless it's to do with payment plans perhaps.
Yeah, right.
Then it wouldn't be public, but
Yeah.
this,
That wouldn't be in that batch anyway.
no. So anyhow,
Yeah, thanks.
that thank you is genuine, and I go into some more details on this handout of what contributions each person makes.
Okay.
Further to the question of, or the statement of public information, this kiosk is up and running, which is new, with Chris and Sue's and Avitar's help. And it's under a lot of use. Typically, closing companies, lawyers' offices, Red Door Title, Summit Title, all these names. They come and they ask what's the status of this and what's the status of that, so they can apportion the taxes. We do not apportion taxes for closing, but that information is now out there. And not only are they using it, but I've received several payments where people are able to print their amounts dues online, amount due online, rather than waiting to come in on a particular time that the office is open. So that's another benefit of it. Real estate agents used to come in frequently, even after I got here, because they have to put in their listings, well, they don't have to, but they do, previous year taxes paid and so forth. Well, that's all online now.
Yeah.
Additionally, the kiosk can be used to estimate your interest if it's a late payment. So it's proved to be useful, and I'm glad we did it. Some people have asked about online payments, and I don't think we're ready I'm not ready to address that yet. Some people want to pay their tax bill by credit card. I'm not ready to address it,
Okay.
so unless you folks get some pressure.
It'd be great points if you paid by a
I think
credit
the
card.
tax collector should get the points. The convenience fee, though, I noticed sitting near the town clerk, the convenience fees can get pricey, because
Yeah.
the convenience fee goes right to I'm looking at Chris, I believe they go right to the company. The town doesn't make anything on that.
Goes right to the
Right to
customer.
And
You pay
and
1.5% or so.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Anyway,
2 point something.
2 points.
Yeah. It would be quite pricey for someone, but I assure you, I've had people ask me if they can pay with credit card.
So
Of course-
I'm just looking at the kiosk, and that's pretty cool, actually.
The only thing is, you deal with computers, some people don't. When you do a search, you have to be specific. If you spell my name wrong,
Right.
you're gonna come up with Charlie Reed,
Right.
or whatever.
Have we promoted this at all?
We have, Dawn, I think it's on the website,
Yep, we put out
Yep.
news and announcements
And there's
on
a-
the website. On
and
the-
she put a link on the website.
Okay.
And I've directed several people to that, and when people ask me for faxed information, I supply them with a little blurb I put together that this information is now available. And I think since I've been here, it's cut down on the office telephone traffic.
Yeah.
Foot traffic was never an issue with that. Just have a few brokers come in and ask for information.
You know what we should do in the next newsletter? We should do did you know these are the things you can find on the town website? Or, 10 things you probably didn't know you could find on the town website. There was actually a comment on Facebook the other day about somebody saying, I wish the town had I wish the town had a Facebook page.
Yeah, to post public notices. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
As probably Dawn knows better than any of us, that stuff, it takes management and time to keep it up to date and accurate.
Yeah.
I had people come in today, because I sat in the office, and when I'm in there, I open the door with this office hours, and they want to know why the town clerk wasn't there, because they had automobile, and they said, well, we checked the annual report, and I said, you really gotta, things change.
Yep.
And you should go to the website, and I get the look like, what's that? So promoting it, I tend to agree with you, that would be a good thing.
So does this kiosk pull information from avatars?
That kiosk is not real time. That kiosk requires me to download it, to download the information. So if I receive a payment from you folks tonight and I go home and don't upload that information to the kiosk, it won't be available the next morning.
So you have to enter all of the information?
No. Boop, update kiosk,
Okay.
kiosk updated. There'll be a 2-hour delay before this information, because it goes through Avitar's
Got it.
machinations. I don't know what they are.
Takes all the changes and posts them.
Yes, so if I receive your payment, you may not see it the next day. You can call me and say, what the heck? And I'd say, yikes, I'll download it. But it does require discipline to download it and keep it up to date, and I
Okay.
have it on my calendar. I do it frequently.
Yeah.
So you don't lose a paycheck making a bet on what you see there in terms of money due, but the information of who the owner is also may change. So there's things that can change.
Right.
And on that, let me just say that I never realized, having been in the Board of Assessors, that the relationship between the assessing and the tax collector And what I mean by that is, I can't change some of the important data, such as values of property, ownership, and so forth and so on. That all comes from Sue Serino, the assessing coordinator, reviewing deeds and so forth when they come in, and she inputs that. And then I, synchronize
Yeah,
the two programs, and they're both made by the same company, and so far it's gone flawlessly. So to get the kiosk completely up to date, I need to download from assessing
right.
to this,
Got
and
it.
then to the kiosk. So it's not automated, if you will. And there's a reason for that too, because at certain periods of the year, you can't change ownership, and
Okay.
I'll get to that.
Okay.
Long answer perhaps to a question, but the kiosk is a good thing. I've got some, I don't know if you folks are ever interested in stats of where we are. So I printed one report, of which there are many. Could you pass those on, please? Keep one just in case.
Thank you.
One of the things on there is the taxes include, as you can see, on the left-hand column, you see the warrant, and I'm assuming we all know that a warrant is what comes from the selectmen
Yep.
to collect some taxes. And the coding on those, for example, the 2007 L01 is a lien. So everything with an L is a lien. Go forward down and you see one that's supplemented with an E01. E is excavation tax. And further down you see a G, a T, a U is the luck tax. Anyhow, so this report is for all taxes, not just property taxes that have been not only collected, but uncollected, if you will, way over on the right-hand side, the balance due. You can see that the town is owed round numbers, $738,000 in, from various transactions that haven't been paid. So you can use this, I'm not gonna go through this whole list, but if you have any further questions, I'd be glad to entertain those. So we've received, or I've received through the taxing office, 6 million, I'm not used to these big numbers, 6,661,987, 979, and that's displayed down here,
Yeah.
of which the amount billed out is shown here too. So we're at about a 95% collection rate for the 2017, called the PO1, which indicates it's the first billing of 217.
So we're at 95%.
Collection, yes.
Okay.
For this particular year, and you see that reflected as in the next to the last column, the right-hand side, 3 from the bottom.
Yeah.
Is 287,900 and change is due for the 217 first billing.
So this is the first time we have this data, so we don't know how that compares to,
I don't either, and I asked Chris, I can't speak to what you said, but did you have a feeling that this is about, because I did give this to him some days ago. What was, your feeling was?
This, I don't have good mid-year data. This
Okay.
is comparable.
Yeah.
You know, we're typically, and everything, all these reports change dramatically with the tax dating of USA Springs.
right?
Where the unpaid tax number, you know, went down from 2 million to 700,000.
Yeah, that's not carried anymore
Right,
because
that's not a-
it's
that's now an
deeded.
asset.
That's in the deeded column.
Right,
So
right,
once
right,
you
right,
deed
okay.
it,
Yeah.
it's no longer due to the town.
Got
Right.
it, right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
So that has always made looking at these numbers kind of challenging, because
Right.
the true number was less than half of the printed number.
yeah.
Well, it was true, but take into consideration half of it where it was
Yeah.
applied. So the that report sums this up. I'll give you this printed data too. So what we got coming up is leaning, which, for the benefit of the audience at home, is if you don't pay your taxes, then statutorily the town has to lien your property. The selectmen don't have a choice on that. I don't have a choice on it. So right now, the notification process, which is many steps, so taxpayers have plenty of notice that their property is going to be liened. The notice of arrearage was sent out in January by the former collector. Now, that just is a notice that says, by the way, you haven't paid your 216 taxes, and this is the balance due for this property, and so forth. And the next thing, which I did on July 18, I sent out 87 notifications of impending lien to those that are in arrears for their 216 taxes. Those went out via certified mail, and those 86 notices, again, were hand-generated in the office with the help of the office staff, which includes filling out forms for certified mail. Of those 86, some are returned because we can't find the people that own the property, and we have provisions for. But my job is done when I send it to the last owner of record. So that's done, but it's in the process. So of the 86, there are 54 as of a few days ago that will be liened. So that number has been cut down by 32 properties because people have come forward and cleared up their taxes. And after September 21, 22, which you folks gave me a period of time to do that, I extended it from 1 day to 2, and that has to be done by law, before September 30, if you're gonna lien the property. And at that time, my control is limited over that. As the governing body, you become the representative of the town, you are the lien holder. And with that comes some responsibilities and duties. I've talked to Chris just recently about this, and we had just a general description, and I put in this thing, which I'll hand out. The town, the municipality is the way the law reads, is responsible after the liening process to notify mortgagees. So if Bank of America has a mortgage on my property and it's been liened, they, by law, have to be notified. And then there are some other applicable duties for the town, which I believe at this point, having been through it, Chris is familiar with them. The researching or deed or abstract work to find out who the mortgage holders are, the mortgagees are, has historically been done in-house. It has gotten more complicated because of court cases. The court case have been such that Gene Reed Savings Bank of Kennebunk was the mortgage holder. Well, I sold out, and now it's owned by the Donna Dennis Mortgage Company of Cincinnati.
Right.
Well, how the heck do I know that by going to there, yet the mortgagees have won cases saying you didn't notify me? So what happens is the lien becomes invalid, court case, yada, yada, yada. So with that being said, I've interviewed and had sent to me someone that was recommended by, and she has her business in Newmarket, and it's Jane Sanders Searches of Newmarket comes recommended, and she also has to search for IRS liens, because if the IRS has a lien against a property, they have to be consulted with to see who goes first, type of thing.
Yeah.
So it's more complicated, and I don't know how to do that, nor did Bill do that. So I think we're at a point where the person that did it before was compensated, and I haven't read it yet, but she sent me a proposal for what it would cost for our town. She reviewed our town and said now she understands the type of town it would be and the type of research, so she gave us a price based on that, and I've copied Chris on our correspondence going back and forth with Jane Sanders Searches of Newmarket.
So is that something that's been included in the budget in the past? Because
Yep.
there's somebody.
Yeah, the
Okay.
budgetary impact of farming it out is not
There
good.
was a guy from Deerfield did it for years, Charlie, I think of his name now. And hasn't Heidi done it? Some effort?
Heidi has done it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that,
Like I said, it's becoming a little bit more complicated for just the average person. to
because
do it.
these people, maybe such as the person you mentioned, they do it all the time, they know that Gene Reed Savings is morphed into
Yeah.
whatever, which becomes important during this mortgagee notification process. It's been a big topic with the New Hampshire Tax Collectors Association attorney, Mr. Campbell, about in the training I've gone to, the pitfalls of this and the eagerness of attorneys to come forward and challenge the town on not doing something properly during the lien process, which not only ends, potentially ends the lien, but it puts the town through the agony of appearing in court and so forth and so on. There's been a couple notable ones where the tax collector has been called to testify day after day. I don't want to be there. So, and I don't want to put the town or me through that aggravation. So I want to do it right the first time.
Yep. What's the recourse if, so we engage someone like Jane or whatever her name was, what's the recourse if they make a mistake?
She is bonded.
Okay.
And she sent, I didn't open it, Chris, did she send the bonding paperwork? I think she did.
Looks straightforward, yeah.
Yeah, so that,
Okay.
it goes beyond the town bonding, and so we can,
Yeah, good.
and I don't know the scope of it, though. It'd have to be probably a gross error, but nonetheless an error. And she does that all the time. Fortunately, we are out of sync, in this case, fortunately, out of sync with the rest of the state. Most of the state doesn't give the breathing room that Nottingham does for leaning. They do it in April. They get the notices out, and they're apt to lean in April or May. Historically, this town has sent the notices out in the summer, and then done what they call the execution of the lien in September.
Okay.
And that's right up against it. But the good news is, there's nothing wrong with that. The good news is she's not busy this time of year. So she,
So the process is defined of what you have to do when you're issuing a lien, but the timeline,
timeline is variable, yes.
Okay.
The only thing, there are timelines for notifying the mortgagees. There are timelines for impending lien notices. There are timelines in there. We've complied with them all up to now. And the timeline cutoff date is September 30 for leaning for the previous year's taxes.
Okay.
So this will be going on every year.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you folks have been updated on that. So.
We're well acquainted with one of the lien processes.
Yes, you are. In fact, the person that, she did a cursory look-see to see how complicated the town was, and she brought up one name. And I wrote back to her that property has been deeded, and I hope if you review that, you'll see it's been deeded. So I did not record the deeds, but I'm betting that you did. So she should have found that, and I copied Chris on the little reprimand that is, you should have seen that. Okay, after leaning, this is all collections and what goes on in that office. We're gonna have a session of deeding of lien properties, which cannot occur until after 2 years of the execution of the lien. So this year coming up is the unredeemed liens, in other words, those that have not been satisfied, will be for tax year 2014, which were executed in 2015, such as this year is for 2016, but we're gonna do the action in 2017. So these were liened in 2015, and I don't know how many as of yet. As I say, there's 54 properties that are subject to leaning, and the computer, thank goodness, is able to give me a report on that. So those will be presented, that list, if you will. The process for the new selectmen, and some of you probably already know, but I'll state it for the record and for the audience. I stated the year and the ones that are going to be done by law this year. So I have notification obligations also on those that the property is going to be tax deeded. So when that list is generated, after it's generated, I plan to send it out in December and then be able to do the tax deeding in January. There's no limitation such as on leaning when you have to do that. That September 30th was the deadline for leaning.
Yep.
There is no deadline for deeding. And the Board of Selectmen have a role in that because, as those of you who have served, you can waive a deed,
Yep,
which means that you instruct the tax collector not to sign the deed for
Yep.
this property.
Yep.
And there are provisions in the law that define what the reasons might be. I reviewed some of the old ones. I wish that the board would be specific in their reason for waiving a deed, because the law is clear, and I've had it pounded into my head that there's one sentence in that law that says that the waiving shall not be for the benefit of the taxpayer. So the benefit's got to be to the town.
yeah,
And there are many reasons that can be for the town.
Going back, doing a lot of these, in fact, prior years, it's usually the thing, we look at these proposed deeds and see what the liability will be to the town, and we say, we do not want to take that, we don't want to take the deed, so we waive it, because if we don't waive it, it gets deeded, and we have certain responsibilities. For example, if there's somebody living in it, the residence is occupied, and they have to move those people out, then we own them. We gotta put them up in a hotel or whatever, and that,
yep.
it may be,
Chemical or something,
contamination on the lot or something like we're aware of, in that case, we don't want to own that piece of property, so that's why we waived the deeding. And I looked at them pretty close over the years when we did them, and had a good reason for it.
We'll be working together on that. I assume that once the list is presented, I'd like to be here when the decision is made as to whether to waive them or not. And I think the taxpayers deserve a reason, so if you're not gonna take Gene Reed's property because you're great friends with him, that shouldn't be an observation that's available. It should be for a reason. And Charlie stated a good one, is that I'm living in that house, and if you take my house and throw me out, what happens to me?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Is that done in a public meeting? We do that in public, right?
We have, yes, we don't often talk about it in individual names, or
Yeah.
I've tried to steer you towards using
Map
map
and
and
lot.
lot.
Yeah, yep.
And communicate in writing about those cases where I'm recommending you not
Yeah.
deed something. It's,
Yeah.
I spell that out typically in writing so that we're not broadcasting somebody's, it's public record, but it's, we're not broadcasting somebody's business if we don't have to.
But there is documentation and paper trail on why a decision was made.
Yeah, I've never seen that, nor have I
Not
looked for
really.
it.
No?
It's,
There's mostly discussion, and for what it's worth, I used to take the list and work with the tax collector, and just to get a little bit of background on some of them, and I used to recommend to the board which ones to
Okay.
waive or not
Yeah,
waive.
which is what you did.
And if they wanted more information, then I'd dig it up.
Okay.
yeah, and I have tended to provide more information on the older and larger items that, have some tax impact or
Yeah.
revenue impact.
Yeah,
There's,
yeah,
a number of things that are relatively small dollars that just aren't worth the legal and administrative.
But, so there's two, to Gene's point, there's two kind of chains of command. There's one, if you're discussing it with the tax collector, then you're gonna be in the loop, right? And then if there's the information that's coming to the board with recommendations and justification, then that's information that's available to Gene as well, right?
Yeah, actually, a lot of it comes from the tax collector in that,
Right.
this is what the person told me when they came in to pay
Yeah.
part of their taxes, or
Yeah.
this is, what we know about the property. It's a collection of, in some cases, we're talking to our welfare person about a case, or we're talking to, in some cases, we're talking to the building inspection people about a property. In some
Yeah,
cases,
yeah,
there's a lot of points of information that can come into these decisions.
And that information will be available.
Well, anything I write to the board with certain exclusions is public record. I would not recommend that we have a full-blown discussion about
No,
people and their properties
No,
here
no,
in
no,
this
no,
room, but,
no. But I think, Gene, that you're gonna be a part of that process as well.
Yeah, I would.
Right, so you'll have that.
Assume,
So you
present
should-
the list, we talk about it.
Yeah,
Whatever. And there are, you've seen them, Charlie's seen them, there are people that have been on that list for years. And we have some properties that, I believe, I'm not mistaken, they're up in the $50,000 in back taxes, and have not been leaned, and maybe they shouldn't be, I don't know. But the board, it's a tough decision. At the Rockingham County Tax Collectors meeting, I asked for a show of hands, and there were 20-something tax collectors. A lot of them were town clerk tax collectors. Of the towns that actually call up Ms. Dennis and say, we're tax deeding your property, you and your family are gonna be evicted, half the hands went up. I was shocked. Some towns take a very hard approach to that, Exeter being one of them.
Berlin is another one.
one?
Berlin, New
Is it?
Hampshire,
Yeah. And there's, I think there's various,
Hardcore taxes, either pay your taxes, you're gone.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that's,
And then they sell them. They sell the property. They don't keep them for the 3 year. They try to turn them over.
you don't have
Fast
to
as
keep them for
possible.
3 years. You can sell them as long as you notify the owner that they have first right of refusal. Here's the amount. But anyhow, we'll be crossing that bridge and going in more detail.
Yep.
And with that deeding, of course, notifications and so forth passes to the town because the collector has, for the ones that are tax deeded belong to the town.
Okay,
And
yep.
and you guys have been through that. So you know what goes with that as far as notifications and so forth and so on. So the ones that are waived remain on the tax collector books as collectibles. The ones that have been tax deeded now are off the books, and if you were to look them up, you'd see that there are no taxes due on them because the deeding wiped out those taxes. So the town never got their, for example, they never got their $1 million from one notable one. So that is just to let you know that the job is as involved as I thought it was going to be. So far, so good, and without some support, it wouldn't have been as good. Betsy Warrington was also a former deputy, so that gives me some in-house support.
Right.
Although her duties were limited,
Yeah,
she's been able to produce some records that I couldn't find, so
Right.
that's all good.
good.
But I'm not going back and audit back to whatever and whatever. We're going forward. I've had a few inquiries about certain ones that, from closing companies that said that the property has a lien on it, and that's when Betsy helped me. We found out that it had in fact been paid, and we went through the process of notifying the registry. So anyhow, she's been a help in that respect. And I did lay out everything virtually everything I just said. If you want to do further reading on that,
Great.
you may. These are all alternately stacked, so you can pass those down if you wish.
That's
You
great,
do
Gene.
as you- Well, I want to get one done. I think there's one. One pager.
I got two. There you go. That was one.
You rock.
Any questions?
You guys have any questions for Gene? That's that for Chris. Gene, I'm glad you came in.
Thank you.
I think this was great. I think it was helpful. And I'm glad to hear that, that you're settling into the position.
With a lot of help
Yeah,
It's a
from
big deal.
Habitat too, I might add, who I've crossed swords with in the past, but when they're doing things right, I'll give them credit. Their support has been very good.
Good.
One of the best things about their support is the principal over there that deals with the tax collect program is a former tax collector.
oh, right,
So not only do I call her for program help, but just what do you think about this type of thing? And that support has been during regular working hours. So I come in, my office hours only reflect a portion of the time that I spend here, as much as I did with Bill,
yep.
because I like hanging around the office.
Charlie,
Chris loves to see me come in his office.
he's told me that. Charlie, did you have something you were gonna say?
No, I don't. Just thank you, Gene. I know it's a big job, and, I believe you've done well. I've got good reports from people.
Oh, really? Yeah, good, good.
So,
And as a side note, Bill has a job which he's had for years, which allows me some public access to him, and I do bounce things off to Mr. Garnett, and he's been helpful too, as the way things were run in the past.
Good, great.
I appreciate the notes and the explanation. It's the detailed what and why that helps me understand it better, so
Yep.
thank you for
Yep.
that.
Good, you're welcome. I
Yep.
tried to keep it
I get just one question.
short because I could ramble on.
Yeah.
This is more than, I mean, does the town, I guess Dawn's here, do we accept credit card for any kind of payment, anything in town, or?
Well, yeah, for,
Registration.
registrations.
Town
Yeah.
clerk, anything that,
Town
I
clerk.
believe anything the town clerk does can be paid by credit card, because they have that system set up.
Well, I'm just thinking though, somebody could fortunately fall behind their taxes and came in and said, I wanna pay $10,000 in taxes on this credit card.
No,
I mean,
Yeah,
I defer to Chris.
Our existing credit card systems, we couldn't even hotwire it to do that
yeah.
cleanly. I might be able to make one of them do it, but I'd probably be breaking a law somewhere. So there's no way to pay property tax with a credit card. We can't even set that up without a board of selectmen approval, can we?
Good question, I don't have the answer.
There's no way to do it now.
The only,
Can't do it. We can't do it. We could set it up if we wanted to and buy a service that is actually pretty cheap and put the systems in place. It'll take us a little while, but it's an option that's available to us, but not today.
along with that, Chris, if I'm not mistaken, it was, and I'm not familiar with this, but my son clued me in, and I'm probably old school, Donnie, you know a lot about it. You can pay your bills online with your check.
Yeah.
I've never done it, and that's one of the options on the kiosk, is there's a three-letter acronym for it, electronic.
ACH?
I do not know.
ACH.
There's a way, and that may be something that we might want to consider, because that carries no service charge. I don't know about additional expenses incurred to the town for that.
Didn't we do that
It's
with
an accounting issue, though, too.
Right.
Didn't we do that with the town clerk before she started taking, credit cards?
No, that's debit cards. It's different. We may have that ACH capability for a couple of those things.
ACH,
Yeah.
Because I've been paying,
You registering your dog with it or your car or something with ACH?
Yeah.
Online.
It may be in
Is that
there.
right? I don't know.
Yeah.
It may be in the online only, but you can't walk in and do it.
right.
That's
Right,
probably
right,
where
right,
it is.
right, Yeah, yeah.
But there's kind of there's a escalating menu of complexity for paying your taxes, and ACH is that entry level, or the kiosk is the entry level where you can see everything. The next level is paying by check, electronically,
And then
and then credit card is the next level.
I'm open to that, but I think that I'm not the one that's gonna be affected as much as the accounting and so forth, and I don't know if it's worth it to do it that way, but that is the trend.
Yeah.
As I was in Market Basket the other day, the woman in front of me says, how much is that? She's, okay, she holds her phone up to the thing. You guys are all up on speed on that.
Apple Pay.
Yeah, something like that. I'm going, what the heck? So I asked the clerk afterwards, and she didn't even quite understand how it worked, but it worked, so she's happy.
it does.
So anyhow, we're probably lagging in technology,
Nottingham? No.
in
That's
method.
not a bad.
But that's not to say that, exactly, Charlie. It's not to say it's a bad thing.
My feather quill is just as good today as it was.
What's that?
My feather quill is just as good today as it was 100 years ago.
Just don't run out of
We're
the.
not lagging.
Okay, that's all
All right.
you have for tax collector?
Thank you very much, Gene.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right, Chris.
I have put on another hat for impact fees, though, at some point, whenever you're ready.
I warned you, he wanted to talk about other stuff, so
Do you,
it's up to you. When do you want to?
do you want to say something tonight about it?
Yeah, I will go over it quickly. I will leave you some material.
Okay.
And I would say that this is an opening discussion on impact fees.
Okay.
And I'm speaking at this point for the record as a citizen, not as tax collector.
Okay, so just for the other members of the board, the planning board has been going through a reassessment of the impact fees, right? And Bruce Mayberry has provided a recommendation, I believe. I don't know that those recommendations have been shared at a planning board meeting yet.
I believe they have, and I believe they are heading toward a public hearing,
Right. Okay, so that's,
I believe.
I think that's what Charlene told us last time. So that's kind of where the planning board is with impact fees. So that reassessment has been done by Bruce Mayberry, who's engaged to do that. And I haven't seen what his outcomes were yet, but
Yeah, I'm gonna pretty much skip over the planning board because that's not within your purview, nor mine. Well, it is as a citizen, but just briefly, the purpose of an impact fee is to provide some of the costs for designated capital improvements caused by new growth. They're meant to be spent as additional capital construction, and it's quite clear through case law and through RSA and through the ordinance itself. It has to have been caused by the development that's been added to the community. This is all available in the ordinance, and I've got one handout in addition to what I'm saying right now. But the quick overview, it looks like just the planning board does all the work, and then the selectmen parcel out the funds. A careful reading of it is the Board of Selectmen have responsibilities, the treasurer, the planning board, the building inspector, the town's legislative body, and the capital improvement committee. So there's several people involved in the ongoing administration of it. The selectmen also have responsibility for the administration. Most noticeably is the dispersing of impact fees to the appropriate party.
right.
If they qualify. Those funds are held in escrow, if you will, with an account that is assigned to that lot, and whoever the current owner is has money on deposit with the town to be used in a specific way. I believe, after a lot of research, that the funds spent for the principal payments of the fire station do not meet the intent of either the Nottingham impact fee or the state law. I don't want to get into a long discussion tonight, but I'd like to give you this, and I have bulleted a couple of things for your consideration. I've talked to Chris briefly about this a couple of times, and we agree that we don't understand. I think, I can't speak for you, but we agree that we don't completely understand and have recently read the ordinance and how it applies. What I just said are the highlights and the reason for having an impact fee. But the fire station was built on the fact that the former station had several problems, such as the septic system was in either failure or close to it, and mold. I've gone back in the town reports, and the review of history supports this. No mention was ever made that that new development or growth caused the need for a new fire station,
Okay.
which is a prerequisite to spend that money. The no mention of impact fees being used as a means of payment were contained in the warrant article that approved the building of a new fire station. The station was built before the impact fee ordinance was implemented. No new growth caused the need for this capital expenditure. And that's what I have to say. I welcome a chance to work on this with anybody within the town. I'm willing to be proved wrong. But mistakes have been made. It's not cut and dry. There are provisions. Furthermore, I believe the recent disbursement of impact fee funds to the school were not in compliance with the ordinance or with state law. The reason is that the impact fees are for capital improvements, again, caused by new growth in town, and a proportional amount of that expense for capital improvements should be borne per the impact fee study, impact fee ordinance. A study, this particular study that the school came and received money for, is not a capital improvement. The capital improvement for which impact fees are to be used must be first approved by the legislative body for the town, which is, as you folks know, the voters.
Yeah.
This was not voted on by the legislative body of the town. A capital improvement should also be on the CIP list, so whatever the school, the fire station was, but there are other issues with the fire station. However, this capital improvement has not been discussed, and it wasn't, the study of the needs of the school was not on the CIP list. Again, I'm not perfect, and I think mistakes have been made. So I request that the Board of Selectmen, as administrators, form an oversight committee, and I make a suggestion of who that should be comprised of, and they are a citizen at large, a member of the CIP committee, since they're involved, an impact fee escrow account holder. In other words, if my property has an escrow account to be spent, that I think that I have a vested interest in, I do not personally, but I think I have a vested interest in knowing how my escrow account is being spent. A member of the 5-member Board of Selectmen, a member of the Planning Board, to review all portions of the administration of the impact fee ordinance. I found flaws. I choose not to go into them tonight, but we're not following it as it should be followed.
Okay.
And I'm ready to go into those at some point. I didn't want to do overload tonight, I just wanted to bring up these facts. And thereafter, after they do a study, there's no one that looks at the whole program. Nobody.
Okay.
Nobody.
Yeah.
We do our part, the planning board does their part, the building inspector collects the money goes to the treasurer, and it's there for the select board to spend. So everybody might do their little part, but there's no overview, and I contend that there has been mistakes made in the building department, and unfortunately, I'm not here to criticize your board, you as a board, but I think on these two particular items that mistakes have been made when it comes to compliance of the regulation. And that's why I asked that an oversight committee of some sort, my suggestion is just off the top of my head, be formed to review it and report back to the selectmen, and of any shortfalls, or it's being run perfectly. I will hand out this as a
Yep.
brief of what I said, but I would ask the board now to give me some feedback. If I fall down, are you gonna catch me?
See, Gene, we were getting along so well on the first topic.
You want these too?
Well, we still should get along just
Want these
fine.
back, Gene?
I'm kidding, Gene.
I don't know, Chris, do you have?
I'm gonna send these ones. I didn't know you took the other ones before, so I just gave you one.
Oh, I'm sorry. This one? No,
I have what you gave me this afternoon.
this one? You can trash it. I have it.
This I don't have.
Just for your information and your reading pleasure, the New Hampshire Bar Association, municipal government law, the perils of impact fee ordinance, and she lists some of the pitfalls, and I believe that we fall into some of these pitfalls. So at your pleasure. I have a ton of stuff, but I don't want to get bogged down with the minutia of it
Thank you.
tonight,
Yep.
especially because I'm catching you somewhat unawares.
So my thinking is, that, I know I personally wouldn't be in a position to, comment in any way on this, just because of, I need to look into it and understand more. I don't know if any other members of the board have any comments that they want to make or questions to be asked of Gene.
I think we'd have to get a consensus of the parts of it that we want to look at, instead of trying to do the whole thing.
Yeah,
If we pick something out and deal with that, whether it be with the municipal association, DRA, some of these questions regarding how monies are used, DRA can give you some feedback too.
yeah.
But, and, I said, town council,
Right.
it could be, it's kind of a big thing there's a lot of items that need to be reviewed here.
There are, and that's my point exactly. We have about $250,000 in impact fees sitting there right now, I believe, in that range.
That seems tall. I think this,
200 and something?
yeah, 160 at the school, 100,
Is that before disbursements or after? Doesn't, it's not, it's,
whatever, yeah.
yeah, it's not for discussion right now.
Bottom line is, it's being used correctly. It needs to be used correctly.
That's one question for this board to address, but further to that is, who has oversight to see that the whole process is being done right? Because what we have now is broadly described as taxation without representation. These people that buy new homes didn't get a chance to vote on this, and they don't know that they bought with their house and escrow account. And that is one,
Because the, refresh my, I know we talked about that, because doesn't the escrow stay with it doesn't-
Property.
It stays with the property, okay.
it's been litigated that the developers wanted their money back,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
ruled against it, they said
Okay.
no. And the reality is, if I'm a developer and I pay the town $5,000, I'm not in the business of making donations to the town, so I build it into the price of the home.
Right,
And that's the logic, I believe, that having the money go with the property rather than with the payer.
yeah,
And that can change
Yeah.
within the life of a impact fee home, that it could be sold.
Yeah.
And Gene Reed sells it to Chris within a year of buying it, so it goes now to, if there's any refund to happen.
and if, everything is held in a separate account, because the money essentially expires. So if Gene paid $5,000 in impact fees, what's the time frame?
6.
6 years. If that's not used within 6 years, it's supposed to go back to him.
Used for an appropriate.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
some towns, and I would advocate this, have an extensive checklist. But my preliminary research shows that they ask for it and it's done. But instead of saying, does this meet, was it on the, I'm shooting from my hip, was it on the CIP list? Yes, no. Was it voted on, this capital improvement, was it voted on by the taxpayers? Yes or no? And a no would mean we're at a standstill, we can't disperse the money. So that's why I'm asking for some help looking into it. If I do not get that help, I'm making it a mission.
Okay.
And so I'd like to know what the select board intends to do now that they have this information.
I mean, I just wanna say, I would say, that from what I'm hearing, this, you know, from that date of that picture there, this has been a past practice of the town of Nottingham. I don't believe it happened just there's been more than the fire station, more than the school. This has probably been an ongoing thing.
No,
No,
no.
impact fees are not that old.
Well, I'm just saying, whenever it came about, this seems like it's been going on. I don't think anybody did this on purpose of the fire station.
No.
I never said that.
I don't want the general public to feel
No,
that way.
I've said that it might have been, I might be wrong, I will preface it with that. And it might have been a mistake to think that it just can be handed out because the fire station or the school comes in and asks for their money. It has some caveats on it. It should be reviewed, and there is no review process now, to best of my knowledge.
Okay, so, I mean, I don't think any of us are prepared to sit here now and say what next steps would be, so I think, we'll connect and talk about what our next steps will be on this.
How
Okay.
will I know about what the next steps will be?
Chris, you
I'll
can,
communicate with them if you want me to.
yeah, yep. Yep. Okay, that's the best I can give you right now, Gene.
I hope that you consider my request seriously about creating some kind of an oversight for a one-time review of the entire program. There are problems, I think pretty firmly that there were problems in the building department and on their role. I know that the proper person isn't keeping track, as the ordinance calls out for, of the fees.
Okay.
I wasn't going to go into the minutia, so my research shows that 3 or 4 things that aren't being abided by.
Okay, okay,
And that's why it's not gonna go away. I got my teeth in it.
got it.
Not only that, but I'm sitting on property that's subject to an impact fee. If I decide to build a one-bedroom house, it's gonna cost me an additional $5,000. And once I do that, I've lost control of my money. That doesn't set well.
Okay, noted.
You're trying to get rid of me.
Well, no, I just, no.
No, I take that
So
back.
wait, I take it back.
I take it back.
I am trying to,
No, I took it back first.
I'm trying, I am trying to get rid of you. Just, there's nothing we can do or say about it tonight, right? But
Okay.
So I'm trying to get rid of you, but I'm not trying to blow you off,
Well put.
and that's a
I
difference.
accept that.
Okay.
When do I come back again?
I don't know that. I
When's
can't
your next
answer that.
meeting?
2 weeks.
Would you put me on the schedule?
And did I mention I'm not gonna be here in 2 weeks because I'm gonna be
Perfect.
away? Put him on in 2 weeks. No, seriously, Gene.
I'm serious too. I'd like a follow-up, and I find that if things like this linger, they die.
I promise you, we will follow
bring
up
that
with
up.
you.
Thank you.
Right? Okay.
So before we make the motion, that we had about,
The impact when this legal tax collection? Do you have?
tax collection and,
What about it?
I did begin it earlier,
That's not
but
valid.
I've been
There's no
collecting
motion
for
that.
the
there's one
missing
here in
number.
the,
But I have
in
one,
the, in
yeah.
the
I'm good.
memo.
I have one of everything. Okay.
Which one?
Right here.
Tax collector notices.
Just to delegate that
We're
authority.
asking about that motion, to the select
Oh, do we
board
need that
hereby
motion?
direct the tax collector to identify and give required lien notice to mortgagees pursuant
But the board is
to
supposed to
RSA. The
No,
direction
I
shall be
know. I
in
didn't,
effect until rescinded.
is that a motion you wanted tonight?
Yes. This is
Okay.
this is what started this whole thing, was you asking for the board to tell you to chase down the mortgage holders.
Mortgagee.
Remember, the mortgagees? That falls to the municipality,
True.
unless the municipality directs you to go do it.
That is the exception.
Right.
Yes. Yes, they have
What we
that.
discussed was
I agree.
this body telling you to go do it.
I agree.
Per the law.
I agree.
That's what they're about to do.
Oh, I didn't know that.
There you go.
Charlie just made the motion, and I'll second it.
All in favor?
Right.
Go do
Go
it.
forth.
My intention right now is, unless I hear objection, I'm meeting with Jane Sanders at a meeting tomorrow in Center Harbor. And I will have to, I can't sign a contract, but I will review that contract and give it to Chris and look for the board's,
Approved. Change approved.
how was that? Did you,
We
Yeah,
just
We
voted.
just did it.
you voted?
Yeah.
Trying to get rid of you, Gene.
Could I have something in writing that it was done
You'll
at this,
have-
at this meeting?
It'll be in the minutes.
All right, may I have a copy of particularly that part of the minutes for my file?
Yes.
Yeah. That was, again, this is through training, and the attorney recommends that you get it yearly. However,
We do it, don't we?
No, this is the first time that I've found us doing this, but
Okay.
we can do it yearly.
Okay,
And this
that's fine.
indicates it's in effect until rescinded.
I was trying to preempt you coming back next year by
Yeah.
putting that in there, but
and then what you said, Charlie, is in contradiction to what's been advised by counsel to the, I don't mind going forward with it, but would it apply to a new tax collector? Think about it.
not your problem.
All right, Gene, thank you.
Thank you for listening.
All right, Chris.
I look forward to the next meeting.
Chris, another everybody's favorite topic.
You almost caught me. What are we doing?
Emergency lanes.
Emergency lanes.
Good night, Gene.
Bye, Gene.
All right.
All right, emergency lanes. So you have received, by way of me, a request for plowing services on Cahill Lane.
Yep.
You have also received from me a copy of your long-standing and perhaps long-forgotten policy on the designation of emergency lanes.
Not forgotten.
The aforementioned policy says that you shall have a preliminary review upon receiving any request like that. And that is where you are in your
Okay.
procedure.
Can you show me on this map what stretch we're talking
Cahill.
about?
This, right?
The-
This
It's actually a separate road.
Yeah, the
What's the stretch?
the spur off of Cahill right now in
Cahill, this,
yellow.
right out to there.
Yep.
And they want this.
Yeah, this is not what I sent you either. What is this? What,
One hat,
um,
sorry.
okay, this is Cahill.
Yep,
This portion here in yellow is already an emergency lane.
yep.
This is the portion here that is the subject of the request.
Interesting,
Is that a
okay.
cul-de-sac?
Not really when you drive down it, but that's what's doodled on
Say that
the.
again?
Showed him what it was.
Yeah, do it on mine, please.
It looks like there's a little island in the middle there.
Yeah, there isn't.
Okay, and that, what is that called now?
That's also called Cahill.
Snow blower out.
In true Lake Road fashion.
Yeah,
It's called
the
16R
street
slash
numbers
W?
don't- Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
okay.
The street numbers don't really jive with.
Right on it says right of way, it's not a road, it's a right of way.
Oh.
How many lots are there on there?
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, who actually owns the underlying land? I don't know that I could tell you that quickly, but,
11 or 12?
Is it, so is there more than one occupied residence out there in that stretch?
I don't believe so.
Okay,
So they're all seasonal?
No, I believe there was
Just
one,
Or vacant,
there's one, I drove it.
camps on all those lots. I gotta go up there, I haven't.
There may be, depending on where the driveways are, relative to the various pieces of the road, there may be more than one driveway in the subject
Had to see.
stretch.
Yeah. Break it out.
okay. All right. So this is the preliminary review. And then, we have to decide if we want to hold a public hearing on it, based on the preliminary review, correct?
That is what your policy would tell you to do, your procedure would tell you to do.
Okay.
You can do what you want to do, but that is the best process we have laid out
Okay.
on paper.
And have you gathered any input from the road agent, town administrator, fire chief, and police chief?
No, well, I can give you the town administrator's recommendation.
Sure,
but,
okay.
Opening yourself, yeah, we do.
I have not gathered it from the others.
Okay,
Big stretch here.
Okay.
Probably doesn't know, so it's
Actually
actually
stops right there.
Yeah.
okay, so what's the town administrator's view?
We have a collection of challenges around emergency lanes. I would not recommend that you take on anything additional in the way of an emergency lane, because the legal requirements of being designated an emergency lane are, it's a pretty high bar. You have to have, there has to be some benefit to the public beyond the benefit to the people on a given way
Exactly.
that would justify spending public money on private property. And that, to me, is a pretty high bar. There could be, in this case, some public benefit beyond that, but it doesn't jump right off the page at me. Driving down the road, it doesn't jump right out at you. There's no asset there that we need to protect. And we've got enough challenges with emergency lanes as it is, and driving the road, you would know that you didn't want to plow it. All you have to do is pull up in it and know that you're not gonna want to plow it. It's small, it's rough, it's nowhere near the standards that we would expect for a town-owned road, and it's even pretty rough
So road condition requirements, is it 16 feet and have signage and?
No, I don't think it has any of those things, but I would recommend that you not consider it even before you get to that list because of that legal restriction and the challenge that we have around emergency lanes as it is. We've got to solve our existing emergency lanes before we take on any new ones. That would be my recommendation to you.
Charlie and Tyler?
I agree.
Absolutely not. I wouldn't even consider it. It's also my opinion that the majority of the public, of the emergency lanes that are in effect now do not meet the requirements of being an emergency lane. And there is no public interest in maintaining them.
That was a battle fought a couple of times in the past 20 years.
I've been in the middle of both of them.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Tyler?
I agree with Charlie.
I agree. I mean, we definitely need to look at the others as well as, I mean, this clearly doesn't meet the requirements based on what I'm reading here. So, yeah.
Okay.
This is almost like a tributary off of Cahill Lane. Even looking at it on the map here, shows
Well,
a lot of Cahill Lane is one size, and as soon as you turn off onto that tributary there, it narrows right down. I haven't been out to that one specifically in recent years, but, you know, just to make sure that I'm not doing something completely wrong, I probably will drive out there and look at it, but
Yeah.
I still,
Yeah, yeah.
it doesn't meet the need, in my opinion.
Fact of the matter is that there's a number of spots where roads are plowed, but there are sections of it that are not. Like the plow will stop at a certain point and not go the rest of the way, and there's a number of those conditions. Okay,
That's the case on Cove Road, the same map. If you look just above this a little bit, there's a blacked out area.
yeah,
The plow stops at that intersection, doesn't continue down there. The road continues down, but it's just a camp road.
yeah. Okay, so it sounds like the majority of the board is saying, after, based on review, no desire to take this any further with a public hearing or discussion about making this section an emergency lane, correct?
Okay.
Okay. So what happens, you notify the,
Yes, I've traded a couple notes with the landowner that was requesting it. And I don't know if it was clear enough to him that he could come and talk to you tonight, so I may open the door again for him to do that, just so he feels like he's
That's
heard.
I'm okay with that.
He may not have learned that he could come and talk to you in time to get it on his schedule. I don't know. I don't want to, you know, deny him that. But I will relay your
Reservations?
I'll probably be a little stronger than that, but yes.
Okay, personnel, is that public or non-public?
We actually have to do a little bit of both.
Okay,
One is generic and need not be in non-public, and one is about specific applicants and should be in public.
Okay.
So if you're okay with starting in public about, generically,
Yeah.
we'll do that, and then
Okay.
finish up and go to non-public?
sure.
Okay. So the public portion is, what do we do, how do we structure our staffing in light of the resignation of our building inspector, code enforcement officer, health officer, Paul Colby? We've gone about a month or 5 weeks now without anybody in that role. We're filling in with, you know, we Band-Aided with the health officer, and
Yep,
the planning board chairman has been doing some of the technical prep work around planning board issues, because he knows how to do that stuff, so we haven't felt too big a pain there. But we cannot live forever without covering some of these essential functions. What I laid out with you by memo and chatted with the planning board chairman about last week, and and Charlene today, was the idea of breaking some of those functions apart. We had one full-time position that was doing that, building inspection, code enforcement, health officer,
Yep.
and supporting the land use boards, the planning and zoning boards. I think where we ought to head is to break that up. It never really added up to me as a good full-time job. The workload did not, sometimes it did and sometimes it didn't justify being a full-time position. And I think for the same or less money, we can get a comparable service level for residents and property owners and our land use boards. I think we'd probably save money in the end, breaking it up, not paying a benefit eligible person, and getting perhaps in each of those various roles, we might be able to find better, higher skilled, high skilled people
Specialized.
in those roles. So the first piece the piece that we need to really get moving on is the building inspection piece. We're still, we have a demand for that year round. We don't want to rely on other towns' people any longer than we have to. I've actually heard from a number of people who'd be interested in talking to us about the job, which is a new thing for me.
Seriously.
But I think a part-time person, or perhaps even two part-time people in that role, and then a separate role to support the planning board and the zoning board doing planning functions, site reviews, those, that kind of thing. Not the administrative side of that work, but the technical and professional side of that work. That is not as well defined yet. I'm working with with Dirk on how we might shape a job like that, whether that's a permanent employee or it's a small firm that we hire to do it, or a contractor or something like that. The hard part of that is that the workload really spikes and ebbs quite a bit. The planning board stuff gets really busy at times, and then it gets really quiet at times. So that would be a little bit tougher position to staff with a regular employee. On the building inspection side, I think we can model a pretty clean part-time job. The reason I say two people is that for a few reasons. I think as we've seen with all of our departments, turnover is a real stinger for us. We end up invariably with gaps. Whenever we have turnover in anything, we have these holes. And if we had two people, we could avoid that. Whenever we had a short-term vacancy in the inspection thing, we're always scrambling to get some other town to come in and do it, because it's not a role that any of our other employees can step into.
Right.
You can live without me and live without Dawn and live without a whole bunch of our people for short periods of time, but you can't do that with a building inspector. It would also give us, I think it'd make it a bit easier to schedule appointments for people. I think we're going to have to, these are appointment-based inspections typically is how we've done things. With a couple of people available, we'd have more time to do office hours and appointments. And it would also help kind of have another set of eyes on
Right.
what we're doing out there.
Yeah.
It's a hard thing to oversee, whether, how are we doing in that function.
But you still, if you talk about two part-time people, you're still not envisioning those two part-time people to add up to a full-time equivalent.
No, there's not enough work for that.
Yeah.
In that building inspection role, there's not enough. So
Yeah.
it's, I don't know if it's one or two. I think it probably depends on what comes out of that, an interview process, and see who's out there and interested on a part-time basis.
Yeah.
But I think that to start out, while we kind of learn how to do it this way, it's 20, 25 hours a week, something like
Total,
that.
yeah.
Total.
Yeah.
And that'll bounce around a little bit, but it's in that neighborhood of about that much time. And, you know, some spring is probably busier than January or whatever, but,
In that type of a scenario, would you envision paying them hourly or like a, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
okay,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, these are, and I think whatever we do, when we break it up like this, it's gonna be hourly.
Yep.
The piece that is kind of left unsolved are the health officer and the code enforcement functions. You know, that goes pretty well with a building inspector, but it invariably ends up involving either the person in my job or the full board if you get to a true enforcement thing, you know, where, I don't know how many of those you actually went through, but it has its way of working its way
Can you
up.
explain for me, like, so, you know, the difference or, you know, the territories for building inspector versus code enforcement?
Well, it's however you want it to be, but a building inspector is checking for compliance with the National Building Code and Fire Code.
Yeah, yeah.
The code enforcement officer is looking more at what's in compliance with our zoning ordinance.
Okay,
There's only one thing going on right now, and it's an oversized for sale sign on real estate. So the sign is bigger than the ordinance allows, and somebody complained about it. So me, as your de facto code enforcement person, I'm, you know, working on solving that. That's against the rules, it's against the ordinance,
okay,
and we need to enforce it. So
okay.
that's the kind of thing that,
Okay.
you know, and junk cars, fences that are too high.
Okay, how much of that do we get every year?
We get very little. You know, it's, you could go out and find more if you put your mind to it. You know, we've not done much that's proactive. We do a lot, we've done some responding to complaints.
Yeah,
Goes through spurts, anyway.
Yeah.
okay.
And
Should we
that's,
be proactive or,
well, you have an ordinance. What's the point of having an ordinance if you aren't gonna enforce it? You know, I guess is one answer.
sure,
That's more a, what kind of town do you wanna be question
Yeah,
for the
I know.
town fathers and mothers than it
Yeah.
is for me, but, that doesn't necessarily need to be somebody's job. You know, if you wanna be really proactive about it, you'd hire somebody and say, here's the ordinance, go find the offenders. And that's what you'd get, is you get somebody to go out and look for things that don't comply with the ordinance.
yeah.
That's perhaps one end of a pendulum, and the other is the board does it themselves, and if somebody complains, then you decide how you want to handle it. You know, and that's the other end of the pendulum, and you could be somewhere in between. So
Yeah, yeah.
I don't have an answer for that piece yet. I'm doing the one, I'm responding to the one thing I know of is a problem. You know, I'm not jumping up and down to hire somebody to do that right now. We
Yeah.
may come to
Yeah,
that,
okay.
or it may fit in nicely with somebody that, you know, is a building inspector that's out drive. The best thing about it is that they're out and around, and you know, they're driving around town, they're driving down the back roads, and they're seeing these things, and they're, you know, out of their car in the backs of properties where they're gonna see things, and,
Yeah.
it's a natural fit, but I'm just rambling now.
Okay.
But,
All right. Okay, so what do you,
So what I need is your feedback to say, yeah, it's probably a good idea, and then I can come to you with a job description and say, this is what I want to go hire for a building inspector. That's job one is finding a building inspector. And I'd like to get rolling on that, but I need to
yeah.
have some guidance from you.
So the question is, are we okay with moving away from a full-time building inspector and looking to more of a part-time resource, whether it's one or two type people, but moving to part-time?
I don't think it's a bad place to start. As things go on and the other positions don't come out, you may start adding some of that back to the building inspector
Yeah,
and give them more hours, or still not necessarily full-time, but give them more hours. I don't know.
yeah,
We never used to physically go out and look for stuff, but, you know, we always had enough complaints that would keep different people busy.
yeah, yeah. Tyler?
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
I agree too.
Okay,
Okay,
cool.
cool. Is that, ready?
That's enough to keep moving. And on the other piece, the supporting the planning board and whatnot, Dirk's helping kind of model what that might look like. So
Okay.
we'll come back to you with something on that.
Okay.
Stratford Regional be any help with that?
Yeah, they could be that kind of, consultant basis role.
Now, we a member now, or are we
No.
paying them as we go? If
Yeah,
we
we're
need
still-
something, we'll pay them.
we're still
We
a
were
la
paying
carte.
like 5,600, 6,000 a year for their services, and we weren't getting much from them.
Yeah, if we wanted to use them for that more active planning board support kind of stuff, I think we'd need to be members and pay them for it.
Yeah.
That's not something that members get for free.
Right,
Yeah.
right, okay.
I think Northwood did that for a little while, not long ago. They had an arrangement like that, so we'll feel that out. We gotta kind of know what the work is first before we go shopping for somebody to do it, but.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Now we want to go into non-public, again, to discuss personnel issues. So we'll go into non-public, we will come out of non-public, we've covered everything on our agenda, so there'll be no further discussion after the non-public, so we'll be adjourning the meeting, right away after that. So I will take, I forget, we're supposed to do this, we're supposed to have the motion, right? So what you want is that one right there.
It's B?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll make a motion that the board enter non-public session per RSA 91A:3, Section 2B, to discuss personnel matters.
Roll call. Roll call in favor of going into non-public?
Aye.
Hi, Tyler Eaton.
Aye, Donna.
Tony, aye.
All right.